Ancient Egypt. If you truly want to understand the Egyptian afterlife, you need three names: Osiris, Isis, and Anubis. They're not just famous gods, they're the pillars of a story that explains why Egyptians mummified bodies, why they feared chaos, and above all, how they hoped to be reborn after death. Picture this: for the Egyptians, dying wasn't disappearing. It was crossing the Duat, a world packed with thresholds, dangers, and judgment. And at the end of that journey there was one question: are you worthy to keep existing? Osiris is the final answer, Isis is the force that makes rebirth possible, and Anubis is the sacred technology that gets you to judgment intact. Let's start with Osiris, the most human, and at the same time the most powerful. Osiris is the god king, the ideal ruler, the civilizer, the one who brings order and law. But his true greatness comes from something shocking: Osiris dies. And precisely because he dies, he becomes Lord of the Dead. Not a distant god, a god who crossed the same threshold everyone must cross. For the Egyptians, that made him believable. If Osiris died and then continued to exist in a higher form, then you, through the right rituals, can do it too. And now the most dramatic part enters: Set. Set is the brother rival, tied to disorder, storms, the desert, forces that break harmony. In the most famous version of the myth, Set destroys Osiris through deception and cuts him into pieces. It's powerful because it represents chaos shattering order. Osiris's death isn't just a death, it's the idea that the world itself can break apart. This is where Isis appears, and you immediately understand why she became one of the most beloved figures in all of Egypt. Isis isn't only a magical goddess. She is intelligence, willpower, love, strategy. She refuses to let order be erased. Isis searches for Osiris, reassembles him, protects him, and performs something incredible: she makes rebirth possible, even if not in a normal way. Osiris doesn't return to rule among the living as before, he becomes king of the afterlife. But Isis still manages to generate the heir, Horus, the future avenger and legitimate king. This is the key: Isis is the force that turns tragedy into dynastic continuity. It's the perfect myth for a people who believe the kingdom must always continue, despite crises, deaths, and war. And now comes Anubis, often shown with a jackal head. Anubis is the professional of the threshold. He's the god of embalming, necropolises, and protection of the body. In the myth, Anubis is tied to the most delicate moment, when Osiris is prepared, protected, and transformed so he can exist beyond death. In other words, Anubis is why mummification isn't an aesthetic obsession, it's a technical sacred act. If the body is destroyed, identity is at risk. The mummy is an anchor. It's the house that allows the spiritual components of a person to reconnect. This brings us to something Egyptians understood perfectly: a human being isn't just a soul. It's a set of parts: the body, the ka, vital force, the ba, personality and mobility, and the final goal, the ak, the affective spirit, luminous and truly capable of living in the afterlife. And the myth of Osiris is cosmic proof that this transformation is possible. Now pause for a second and look at how genius this triad really is. Osiris is the destination, the king of the afterlife, the judge, the promise of rebirth. Isis is the process: she rebuilds, protects, and makes continuity and life's magic possible. Anubis is the method, the rite, protection of the body, safe access to judgment. And now we reach the most famous moment of the Egyptian afterlife, the judgment. Anubis weighs the heart of the deceased. The heart isn't just an organ, it's memory, identity, morality. It's the real person. If the heart is too heavy, loaded with chaos and wrongdoing, the dead risk final destruction. But if it's in harmony with cosmic order, they can pass. And who presides over that realm? Osiris. He's not only a ruler, he's the model of someone who died and defeated death. And here we reach the most powerful link to the pharaohs: politics. In Egypt, religion and power are the same thing. The living pharaoh is associated with Horus, the Falcon King, the legitimate son, the ruler of the world of the living. But the dead pharaoh becomes Osiris. He enters the realm of the dead and retains sacred authority. It's an enormous symbolic passage. Every royal succession repeats the myth. The king dies, Osiris, the new king rises, Horus. Power never breaks, it transforms. And Isis? Isis becomes the archetype of the queen and the royal mother. Her role in the myth, protecting the heir, making him legitimate, guaranteeing the throne, is exactly what kingship wants to project in real life. That's why, across many periods, the figure of the great royal wife and the pharaoh's mother resonates with Isis, a political image disguised as myth, and a myth that strengthens politics. Anubis connects to another level, the professional side of the sacred. The embalming priests, the mummification practices, the formulas, amulets, masks, the opening of the mouth ritual, this entire technical ritual world lives under Anubis's protection. It's as if Anubis is the divine guarantee that the protocol is executed correctly. And in a culture that believes ritual truly works, precision is everything. There's also a beautiful detail. The Osiris myth contains the nature of Egypt itself. The cycle of death and rebirth echoes the Nile cycle, fertility, grain that dies underground and then rises again. Osiris isn't only a god of the dead, he's also a symbol of regeneration. And that's why his cult becomes massive, because it speaks to the most universal thing there is, losing and finding again, dying and being reborn. And remember, this story isn't a fixed fairy tale. It changes, adapts, and is told differently across the centuries. But the skeleton stays the same, chaos breaks, will rebuilds, ritual transforms, judgment decides, and order continues. So when you see a sarcophagus covered with Anubis figures, when you read formulas invoking Osiris, when you find protective amulets speaking of rebirth, those aren't decorations. It's a complete symbolic machine, a religion of eternity built like a system. And the strongest point of all is this: the myth of Osiris doesn't only explain what happens after death. It explains how a state, a civilization, and an entire idea of kingship can survive time itself. Because every time a pharaoh dies and another takes the throne, Egypt is saying, Osiris and Horus are happening again. And as long as they happen, the order of the world holds.